Hey guys, welcome back to LastWordOnSports.com's official YouTube channel. Interesting conversation this week. I want to talk to you about the possibility of the NFL moving into Canada and specifically Toronto with a big game this Sunday between the Buffalo Bills and Washington Redskins at Toronto's Rogers Centre. I thought that it would be a pretty appropriate time to have this conversation. Now, I actually am opposed to the move, even though I am a Bills fan and I live near Toronto. I think it would be a poor decision, and I have a few reasons why. First, with the exception of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which are obviously wildly popular and always will be, whether they win the Stanley Cup or even make the playoffs, doesn't matter. Aside from that, Toronto is not a very good sports town. I think it was actually featured in Sports Illustrated as one of the worst sports towns, but I didn't actually read the article, but my opinion is that with the other professional sports teams that are in the league being so poorly supported, I can't see the NFL being any different. So here's a few examples. With the Toronto Blue Jays, the only success that they've ever had in drawing attendance was when the team first came about in the late 70s and through the 80s, when the team was becoming quite good actually, and then when they put all the pieces together for the back-to-back World Series in the early 90s. The team was very successful, and they drew, I think, the top in the league, over 50,000 when the Sky Dome first came about. But since then, it's been 20 years since the team has made the postseason, and the fans have gone away. And there's a couple sad things about this that I've noticed over the years. The first one, a few years ago, I was listening to the radio, and there was an advertisement that advertised Toonie Tuesdays for the game. For those of you not in Canada, a toonie is a $2 coin. So for $2, you could go to a Blue Jay game. And I was at one of those games, and I can't tell you how empty it looked, even though they were basically giving away the tickets. And this was even when the team had a few decent players there. And secondly, with the announcement that Jose Bautista is now the reigning Hank Aaron Award winner for the best hitter in the American League, they still averaged the 25th best attendance record. I should say the 25th worst. Anyway, and there's no way that should happen in a city the size of Toronto, being the fourth largest television market anyway in North America. I just can't see how you could end up 25th. And the team is a good team. It's not just Jose Bautista. From top to bottom, they have legitimate players, and they're not that far away from making a serious run at postseason play. But it's just kind of sad to see. 25th is disappointing. Secondly, we have the Toronto Argonauts. Okay, they're granted not the top tier football league in North America, but they are the second best. The CFL is certainly the second best football league in the world by football. I'm not talking about soccer, obviously. I'm talking about North American football. The Toronto Argonauts are over 100 years old, and with that history and that prestige, I just can't imagine being such a poorly attended attendance game in such a small league. Granted, the Argos were actually the worst attended team this year in 2011. They were the only team to be under 20,000 people attending each game. Even Hamilton, which is a city quarter to a fifth the size of Toronto, even averaged 4,000 more per game. So that was kind of disappointing, and that's the top football that we have in Canada right now that you can go and see live, with the exception of the odd the Bills in Toronto series. So I was just really disappointed that that's the best that they could do. Another example, Toronto FC, a new team, obviously in Major League Soccer. It's, again, granted, it's not the best soccer in the world, but it's the best soccer that we have in North America, and I don't expect there to be any other rival league. So it's the best that we have, and the league has taken some steps in the right direction. Even Toronto FC, with Torsten Frings and Koevermans coming from Europe. Frings coming from, he's played for a few different teams. He's played for Bayern Munich and Werder Bremen, and I know Koevermans comes from PSV Eindhoven, which is both teams have competed each year in Champions League, especially Bayern Munich and Werder Bremen, but also PSV. So these are pretty reputable players, and it's really disappointing to go to a TFC game earlier this year and seeing a few thousand empty seats, which wasn't the case 3 or 4 years ago when the team was still new and people still had the love affair. So I think that the love affair is dying away, and unfortunately, and in a city that prides itself as the most multicultural city in the world, there's very few that can actually argue that if you really look into the stats. For us not to be able to support soccer, I think, is kind of disappointing. Another example, the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors, coming about in the mid-90s, had a very, very strong showing. Part of that was to do with the early success with Damon Stoudemire and eventually Vince Carter and the Tracy McGrady days, or maybe the heyday of the Toronto Raptors. But things started to trail off in the last few years, and now they're kind of middle of the pack in the NBA for attendance, despite having a relatively new arena and a very big city to draw from. Each year they just keep going down and down. So a little bit disappointing with the NBA. A lot of that has to do with the team success, but that's kind of my point. In all these teams, it seems that Toronto will support it when you have a winner, but they're not the traditional sports markets that support the team through thick and thin. I think there's one more example I wanted to bring up was actually it escapes me now, but regardless, I think that Toronto is not ready to support something like the NFL. I think it's too big. I think the love affair will be there at the beginning. I think it will start to die off relatively quickly, and I just think that it's the wrong move for the NFL too. First of all, the amount of renovations that would have to go on at the Rogers Centre would cost a whole lot of money. With there being, I think, a peak attendance of 54,000 seats. I think the NFL requires 60,000, so there would have to be an additional 6,000 seats, and I don't think that they know where they're going to put them in. That would be very, very difficult to do. And then also looking back at the past success of the Bills in Toronto series, even though it's a novelty, you would think that it would sell out, but it's actually not. And it was quite embarrassing. I think it was last year or the year before, they were actually giving away seats before the game so that it would appear that the upper bowl was a little more full than it was. So even though they may have reported, I think it was 51,000 seats out of 54,000 sold, it was actually much fewer than that were actually paid tickets. Granted, the ticket prices have been really high, and rightfully so. People are just avoiding it. I myself didn't go, even though I'm a Bills fan and I live near Toronto. Yeah, it's pretty sad. So anyway, that's my conversation this week. I want to talk about the Bills in Toronto. So head over to LastWordOnSports.com. There's a forum already set up about whether or not you think that it's going to be successful. There's also a poll asking you that question. So those are two ways you can join the conversation. So again, head over to LastWordOnSports.com, and thanks very much. Have a good one.